As we celebrate Mashujaa Day 2025, another opportunity to celebrate Kenya's hero Raila Odinga was finally laid to rest at Kango Kajaramogi in Siaya County yesterday. End of an era, a hero send-off. That is what Kenyans have witnessed for the last few days as the military and the entire country led by the president paid tribute to this hero. Flags still continue to fly at half-mast, even as we continue the 7 days of national mourning. But yes, today is Mashujaa Day, and welcome to Morning Cafe, our special coverage of Mashujaa Day celebrations happening in Kitui County at the Ithokwe Stadium. And we want to take you there directly for an update on the events there. We'll come back and take a look at the dailies to see how they've covered the final send-off of Raila Odinga. Our man on the ground this morning is Joash Onsare. Joash, a very good morning. It is a bittersweet morning, trying to compare the events of the past few days and what is happening in Kitui today as we celebrate Mashujaa Day. Bring us up to speed with the events at Ithokwe Stadium.
Thank you very much, Fred Ndimuli. Indeed, it's a good morning here in Kitui County from Ithokwe Stadium, and the stadium is getting full. This stadium has a capacity of 10,000 people, and we are looking forward to see more streaming in to attend this particular occasion. President William Ruto is also expected to grace the occasion and also recognize and award heroes and the heroines of this republic in various sectors. Na hivi sasa Fred, tunaungana na wale mashujaa ambao wameweza kutambuliwa na tutakuwa tunasikiliza ni yepi wanayo kuhusiana na sherehe hizi za mashujaa, mchango wao ni upi katika jamii, na itakuwa vizuri pia kusikiliza sauti zao na wanajisikia vipi wakati ambapo tunazungumzia sherehe za mashujaa kutoka eneo hili la Kitui. Moja kwa moja ni washirikishe tusikilize wanasemaje kuhusiana na sherehe hizi. Karibia hapa ili tuweze kuzungumza. Tuambie kwanza jina lako ni nani na umeweza kuteuliwa katika kitengo kipi cha mashujaa?
My name is Professor Susan Wanjiru Mbugwa. I have taught, I'm in the education professionalism category. That's where I am. I have taught for 43 years in the University of Nairobi, veterinary faculty. And because of that, the world recognized me and they gave me the Global Award for Global Veterinarian of the Year 2025. And then I deal with animals. And to emphasize that there is connection between people, animals, and environment. You must look after your animals for you to be safe. Otherwise you'll get animal diseases if you don't do that.
Asante sana. Unajisikiaje kwa kuteuliwa katika nafasi?
I am so proud. I am Kenyan. Even when I got the Global Award, I was very proud that I'm Kenyan. I'm always proud of Kenya.
Asante sana kwa kuzungumza nasi. Huyo ni mmoja wa mashujaa ambaye amefika katika eneo hili kutuzwa na kutunukiwa kuhusiana na shughuli hii ya mashujaa mwaka 2025. Na mtazamaji, ni shughuli ambayo pia inaandaliwa na Baraza la Kitaifa la Mashujaa humu nchini. Tuendelee kusikiliza hisia za mashujaa wengine. Karibia hapa ili tuweze kuwa na sauti. Na mtazamaji, huyu si mgeni kwenye macho yako, ni mchanganuzi wa masuala ya uongozi. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Tuambie unaitwa nani na unajisikiaje siku leo?
Shukran rafiki yangu tena ndugu yangu ya Josh. Mimi naitwa Kevin Osido na mimi ni mkurugenzi mkuu wa shirika ambalo naitwa County Governance Watch. Na hilo ndilo sababu ninatuzwa na Mheshimiwa Rais na pamoja na National Heroes Council, sababu ya uweledi ama ukakamavu wangu wa kuwaleta wananchi pamoja na pia kuwasaidia kutangamana pamoja na stakeholders mbalimbali, national governments, county governments na different development partners, haswa katika masuala ya kupanua ile engagement processes kati ya wananchi na serikali zao gatuzi. Kwa hivyo tuzo hili ni tuzo ambalo linaonyesha wananchi ya kuwa kile chochote ambacho unakifanya uwezi ukawa pengine uelewi ni nani anakutizama. Kama mimi nimekuwa nominated na Ministry of Interior, especially on issues of prevention of violent extremism and peace building, na pia enhancement of public accountability, masuala ya public finance management, na kuwatia wananchi fora ili waweze wakatia serikali zao holding their governments accountable and especially in enhancing citizen voices. Kwa hivyo nimefurahi sana na pia kongole kwa wanahabari, sababu ile citation ambayo imeandikwa pale inasema ya kuwa nyinyi ndio mmeweza kunipea nafasi tena platform ya kuonekana na pia kuweza kusikizwa. Kwa hivyo nimeshukuru sana hata na kwenyu pia. Asanteni.
Na utaendelea na juhudi hizi?
Ni lazima niendelee. Unajua tuzo ni is a way of appreciation. Kwa hivyo haimaanishi ya kuwa ni ile shughuli inaishia, bali pia inakupea tu ile motisha na nguvu ili uweze ukaendelea. Na kila mmoja wa Mkenya anaweza tuzwa. Kumbuka ya kuwa sisi ni kama tu watu 180 pengine na 4 kati ya Wakenya mamilioni kama 52. Kwa hivyo popote pale ambapo upo, unatuona, unatusikiza, kile ambacho unakifanya, jua ya kuwa unaweza tuzwa at any time by His Excellency the President.
Shukrani sana Osido, tutaendelea na hongera sana. Mtazamaji, huo ni Kevin Osido ambaye ni mchanganuzi wa masuala ya uongozi na tumeweza kuona tuzo yake, na hivi sasa tutakuwa tunasubiri sherehe. Hivyo basi hivi sasa tuendelee. Mama, karibu hapa, tuambie jina lako na unajisikiaje siku ya leo wakati ambapo unatuzwa kama shujaa wa taifa hili?
Nasikia vizuri sana na ninasikia sasa niko pahali panastahili. Nimeshukuru sana kama msichana ya jamii ya Ogiek na nimefurahia serikali ya Honorable William Samoei Ruto kwa sababu ametutambua sisi watu ya chini na akatupea tuzo ya shujaa. So ninaona niko pahali pazuri na ninazidi kuambia watu wangu wasidi kukaa kwa serikali, tuchunge serikali na tufanye amani huko ground. Ile kitu imenileta hapa ni kuunganisha watu yote wakae na amani na kutangaza amani kila mara na kila dakika. Asante sana.
Shukran sana kwa kuzungumza nasi.
Asante sana.
Mtazamaji, huyo pia ameweza kutuzwa kutoka jamii ya Ogiek, ametoa hisia zake akiwahimiza Wakenya pia ni vipi wanafaa kuhakikisha amani inadumishwa kule mashinani. Tumsikilize mwingine ambaye atakuwa anazungumza nasi. Karibu sana, tuseme kuhusiana na shughuli hii. Tuambie jina lako na umeweza kutuzwa katika kitengo kipi?
Asante sana. Kwa majina naitwa Were Simbaka, Head of State Commendation. Mimi ni shujaa kutoka Tharaka Nithi County 013. Nimeshujwa kwa tuzo ya statesmanship. Yes.
Unajisikiaje kama mzee sasa umetuzwa?
Niko na nguvu kwa kuwa honored na nimefurahia kuwa Kitui County ile si ya kanyaga na kukutana na watu wa K47. Yes.
Shukrani sana shujaa kwa kuweza kujitokeza na kuzungumza. Tupate hisia za mwingine. Mzee, karibu hapa, sema nasi, unaitwa nani na umetuzwa katika kitengo kipi?
Thank you very much. Mimi ni Dr. Daniel Randa, the Chief Principal Sia National Polytechnic. Now I've been nominated in human rights in TVET. As the theme of TVET is escalated now, we have a transformative agenda by the Kenya Kwanza government that TVET should offer inclusive quality, equity, access. Now, I as the principal or one of the TVET champion, I decided to do inclusivity of people living with disability to be retooled and skilled in TVET so that they become competitive as any other regular person through competency-based education and training, where skills, knowledge, attitude, and values are cherished in Kenya. I'm very happy to be one of the nominated heroes in this year 2025, and I will continue championing that in TVET subsector. Thank you so much.
Asante sana kwa hilo. Tuweze sasa kumpata ambaye anawakilisha viongozi wa kidini, ameweza kutuzwa katika kitengo cha dini. Karibu sana hapa, sema nasi, unaitwa nani na unajisikiaje katika kitengo hichi kuitwa shujaa?
Majina zangu ni mchungaji Reverend Paul Kemoi kutoka makanisa ya Full Gospel Churches of Kenya. Kwa sababu ya siku ya leo na nimefurahi sana hasa kutambuliwa. Sisi kama watu wa dini tumekuwa tukifanya mambo hasa maslahi ya kiroho, tukifundisha watu habari ya kuokoka, kumjua Mungu na kubadilika. Na pia nimefurahia serikali ya Kenya ya kwamba tumekuwa tukifanya mambo mengi hasa katika jamii, na kwa wakati huu niliona imekuwa ni maajabu hatua kufikiria kwamba tunaweza kumbuka kuwa kati ya mashujaa katika nchi ya Kenya. Tumekuwa tukifanya mambo mengi katika jamii, hasa kufundisha jamii kutoka katika mambo mengi ambayo yamepitwa na wakati na kuweza kutembea na nyakati ya sasa. Na pia tumekuwa tukisimama na wamama, wajane, watoto mayatima. Nashukuru sana kwa sababu Mungu ametenda mema.
Umetoka katika kaunti gani au ukafika Kitui?
Nimetoka kaunti ya Nakuru katika jamii ndogo ya Ogiek, na pia na wakilisha makanisa ya Full Gospel katika maeneo ya Rongai.
Shukran sana kwa kutuzwa na ongera sana. Na mtazamaji, huyo ni kiongozi wa dini. Tuweze kumsikiliza kijana pia ambaye anatuzwa katika sherehe hizi za mashujaa. Karibu sana bingwa hapa na ongera sana kwa kuteuliwa kuwa shujaa wa taifa hili. Tunapozungumzia sherehe za mashujaa, unajisikiaje kama kijana kuweza kuchaguliwa?
Shukran sana. Mimi naitwa Tanui Dominic, natoka jimbo la Nandi County. Ninashukuru sana kwa sababu niliteuliwa kama shujaa katika kiwango cha utunzaji wa mazingira, and we are in the wake of climate action and there are a lot of things we need to do in terms of forest conservation. Mimi ni mwenyekiti wa Community Forest Association kule Nandi, na tunahusisha jamii katika zile shughuli ambazo zitahakikisha kuwa wanalinda misitu ili kuweza kupunguza ile makali ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi.
Na hivi sasa najua kuna vijana wanatazama na tunapozungumzia ushujaa, wewe ni kijana mdogo, wito wako ni upi kwa vijana?
Ningependa kusi vijana wenzangu, hivi majuzi tumekuwa na changamoto haswa katika hili jambo tunaita Gen Z, na ningependa kuwasihi kwamba tuko na mambo mengi ambayo tunaweza jihusisha haswa kuleta suluhu katika zile changamoto zinazotukumba kama dunia. So mojawapo ni hili la mabadiliko ya tabia nchi na mambo mengine ambayo tunaweza jihusisha ili tuweze kuonyesha ushujaa wetu katika generation hii ya Gen Z.
Shukran sana kwa kutuzo na hongera sana. Mtazamaji, ndo hali halisi, tunazidi kukufahamisha mengi tu kutoka uwanja huu wa Ithokwe katika kaunti ya Kitui, shughuli nzima ikiwa ni sherehe za Mashujaa mwaka 2025. Fred Ndimuli, hali ndivyo hivyo, na katika uwanja huu maafisa usalama wameshika doria, na vilevile jana tukipita katika kaunti hii karibu na uwanja huu tumeona miradi ikiendelea kupigwa jeki, tumeona barabara zimekarabatiwa, na vilevile mtazamaji, tumeona uwanja huu ambao ni uwanja wa kipekee kujengwa katika kaunti hii. Kumbukwe kwamba sherehe hizi za kitaifa zimekuwa zikipelekwa katika kaunti mbalimbali humu nchini, na ndiposa tunazidi kukujuza, na mnasa picha wangu akikuonesha uwanja hivi sasa unaendelea kufurika. Maafisa wa usalama wamefika, na unavyoona Mashujaa pia wamekaa kitako, wanasubiri tu kutuzwa, wakati huu ambapo tunazungumzia sherehe za Mashujaa, na ni sherehe za mwaka 2025, wakati ambapo tunazungumzia shughuli nzima ya sherehe hizi, na naarifiwa kwamba kuna mzee mmoja angependa kutoa sauti yake, na ni vizuri tuweze kumsikiliza. Mzee, habari za sasa? Na habari za sasa, unajisikiaje kutambuliwa kama shujaa?
Asante sana. Mimi naitwa Dickson Sitiene kutoka Kericho. Mimi ni kutoka jamii ndogo naitwa Talai. Nashukuru sana na nafurahi, nashukuru kwa serikali ya Kenya kwa kutambua watu wa Talai, jamii ndogo kabisa. Mimi nilitunukiwa kama shujaa. Nasikia mzuri.
Hongera sana. Na mtazamaji, hivyo ndivyo hali ilivyo, na hapo ndipo Fred tunamalizia. Mengi zaidi tutakuwa tunayapata kadri muda unavyozidi kusonga, kwa sababu ndo mkoko unaalika maua hapa katika uwanja wa Ithokwe, kaunti ya Kitui. Fred Ndimuli, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Joash Unsare, our report on the ground at the Ithokwe Stadium in Kitui, the venue of this year's Mashujaa Day celebrations, to be led by none other than President William Ruto. More than 180 heroes proposed for honors today, and we'll be heading there for that ceremony. Quite a hot day in Kitui today. It's 16 degrees as we speak. A sunny day promises to be highs of 30 degrees. So for many people who are traveling to Kitui for the celebrations, do expect quite some heat. 30 degrees is unlike what many people are used to, especially those ones coming from Nairobi, but a sunny day nonetheless. Other areas of interest today would be areas like Bondo, where a lot of focus was over the weekend. It is a fairly warm day as well, but a lot of rain expected, especially in the afternoon in Bondo, especially starting at midday going forward. Chances of rainfall there a bit high. 5.1 millimeters of rainfall expected there. Highs of 28 degrees in Bondo. Meanwhile, Nairobi is not so bad today, and 15 degrees, highs of 27 degrees in the city. Yes, we'll continue taking a look at Mashujaa Day celebrations, and of course we'll be heading there once the event starts in earnest. For now, let's come back and take a look at what's headlining, of course, the events of the weekend, especially the state funeral of the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, dominating the headlines this morning. This is how the Taifa Leo has chosen to cover it. Nenda Salama, Raila Odinga, and an aerial view of the gravesite there as military officers lowered the casket into the ground. A hero send-off, that's a star this morning. Former Prime Minister eulogized as a patriot, Democrat, and great statesman, and we have a photo there of his widow, Ida Odinga, and his last-born daughter, Winnie Odinga, laying a wreath at the gravesite yesterday. A similar story, our Shujaa always, and this connects the events of the past few days and what's happening today as we mark Mashujaa Day. And according to the Standard, Raila Odinga is one of those Shujaas that we should be talking about. And another aerial view of the casket inside the grave, surrounded by mourners there yesterday. A lot of some comments here and some tributes from members of the family, and also the president on the front page of the Standard, our Shujaa always. Daily Nation continues with that spread front and back page. Joey, another aerial view of that gravesite. End of an era Raila Odinga, 1945 to 2025. Raila Amolo Odinga, a man who starred the country's political scene for over 4 decades, emerging the runners-up in the last 4 of his 5 presidential runs, was accorded a 17-gun salute by the military, sharing a state funeral that during a state funeral that brought the curtains down on the dramatic life of the veteran opposition politician. Very major coverage on this paper, pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 22, 23, 24, and 25. More than 10 pages dedicated to that state funeral on the Daily Nation. People Daily, same story. Goodbye, BAMBA, a farewell to Kenya's true Shujaa. Also the connection between what we've witnessed in the past few days and what we're celebrating today as we mark Mashujaa Day. And once again, that photo of the widow and his last-born daughter laying a wreath there. Even the Business Daily pays tribute to Raila Odinga. Raila's unfinished business. The ex-Prime Minister pushed for revival of Vision 2030 projects. Election manifestos promised to grow manufacturing. Fare thee well, and a special report on Raila's final journey on pages 2, 3, 4 of the Business Daily. Even the East African, Pan-African man of the people. That's the front page of the East African, a weekly paper. If we go to Uganda, same story. That's the only story on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Bye-bye, Baba. Former Kenyan Prime Minister and opposition Doyen Raila Amolo Odinga gets military honors complete to the 17-gun salute, unlike his late father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who was not accorded a state funeral despite having served as the country's first vice president. And it's a very interesting angle to it, the comparison between how Raila Amolo Odinga was laid to rest yesterday with all military honors and what happened in 1994 when his father Jaramogi Oginga Odinga died, and the kind of send-off he received, despite the fact that Oginga Odinga was Kenya's vice president at one point. So that comparison, very interesting from Uganda. That's a Daily Monitor. Same story, at least there's a mention of the same story on the New Vision still in Uganda. Adio Raila, and the coverage on pages 4 and 5. But of course, they continue with matters campaigns in Uganda, with the presidential campaigns going on. Museveni campaigning in Moyo yesterday. Many people had expected Museveni to attend this funeral. He did not. He was busy campaigning. The big story, though, there, security probes death of 6 murder suspects in Uganda. Tanzania, do they make mention of it? Yes, they do. Gazeti la Mwananchi, kwaheri baba, kuna pale. Lakini masuala ya kampeni pia yanazidi kunoga kule Tanzania. Kumbuka, ni siku 9 peke yake kabla uchaguzi mkuu kule Tanzania. Inamaanisha basi kuna siku 7 peke yake zimesalia kwenye kampeni zile, sababu zinafaa kusita masaa 48 kabla ya uchaguzi mwenyewe. Kwa hivyo habari kuu pale, mchuano wa waratibu kampeni za CCM na kwingineko. Kauli za amani ukweli za tikisa ni kutoka viongozi wa dini kuelekea uchaguzi mkuu wa Oktoba. Askofu ataka watu wakubali kukosolewa. KKKT wampa tuzo Samia. Na Heche, uhamiaji ni mguu kwa mguu. Lakini habari ile ya mazishi ya Raila Amolo Odinga akipewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili la Tanzania Mwananchi. On the front page of the Citizen, okay, this one does not make mention of Raila Odinga. Matters business on this front page. And a bit of campaign, Samia, why national water grid is a game changer. So yes, it has been a big story in the region, both in Kenya and in Tanzania. So you'll realize that the focus today, yes, even as we focus on Mashujaa Day, and this is a special coverage of Mashujaa Day, a lot of the discussions that we'll be having from the dailies is what has happened, what has transpired over the last 5 days since the news broke of the passing on of the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga. And most of the dailies have paid attention to that and the kind of final respects and military honors that were accorded to the former Prime Minister, plus, of course, the political discussions that dominated the speeches at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University in Bondo, where the final send-off was carried out before the body was interred at Kango Ka Jaramogi. This morning, we are privileged to have with us Dismas Mukua, political commentator. Karibu sana Dismas, political risk analyst. Yes. Yeah. We'll be talking about the kind of risks now that portend following the events of the last few days.
Thank you.
Wakili Kibe Mungai also joined us this morning. Karibu sana. And Professor Fred Ogola, economics and governance expert. And we also do expect that someone else will be joining us as we continue these conversations, especially on the political and end of an era, now that we are witnessing the end of one of the towering figures in Kenyan politics.
Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda.
Yes, indeed, our special coverage of Mashujaa Day 2025, 180 heroes to be honored at Ithokwe Stadium in Kitui this morning. Even before we discuss anything else, happy Mashujaa Day, Dismas. Moment for you to give us your Mashujaa Day message before we even delve on the dailies today.
You know, today is a very important day. This is when we remember the Mashujaas who actually fought for our independence. So the others who are celebrated as Mashujaas because they fought for independence, and others are celebrated for just being politically correct. But for the genuine ones, those ones deserve a pat on the back, especially those whose actions are aligned to national and public interest and who have given a lot of time and resources to ensure that Kenya is a shining star. Those ones, they deserve a pat on the back. But the ones who are going to be referred to as heroes or Mashujaa on account of proximity to power, then they need to sit back and reflect. You may recall that a certain gentleman was referred as a Shujaa simply for eating githeri while he was going to vote. So I'm not sure if that is the criterion, then it means every Kenyan who has ever voted and has had breakfast before going to vote then should be treated as a Shujaa.
Right. Wakili Kibe Mungai, your Mashujaa Day message.
Yes, first is to wish every Kenyan a happy Mashujaa Day. This is an important day in the history of our country, starting with the fact that historically this was the day associated with the arrest of Jomo Kenyatta, and other when there was the declaration of a state of emergency. And since it ultimately, those events would ultimately lead to the independence of our country, it is definitely a very important day. And in this case, my first Shujaa, I keep on telling all those who are my friends, is Dedan Kimathi. The Dedan Kimathi and his young men had everything to do with why we have Mashujaa Day, even from the direct historical point of view. Secondly, today also, as we mark this Mashujaa Day, it is also the first day since Raila Odinga, whom I consider an important Shujaa in our country, particularly with regard to the events leading to us having both multi-party democracy and the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was laid down yesterday. So it's an important day. And finally, is that every Kenyan who loves their country, whether or not you get a state commendation for it, and you do your best to ensure that this is where you are talented, this is your station in life, you do the best you can for your country, you are a Shujaa, and there will be people, all kinds of people, who nowadays carry state commendation, or GW, GG, whatever, and they have been cheapened to some extent. So with or without state commendation, Do your best, love your country, you are a Shujaa.
Thank you, Wakili. Finally, Prof, your message for Mashujaa Day.
Yeah, I take this chance to wish all Kenyans happy Mashujaa Day, but especially when we begin from the first liberation, Shujaas. Then we got the second liberation, Shujaas, where Raila Odinga played a very significant role. In fact, his role given today is just one day, not even 24 hours before he was buried, shatters every other person who looks like a Shujaa. But I want to remember the Shujaas of the third liberation, which has begun, which is the Gen Z. I remember people like Rex Masai. I'm sure they have not been awarded anything. I know people like Julian Njoki. I don't want to count all the names of them. Those who have been shot by this government and killed this day, they are Shujaas. They have fought for liberation of this country economically, fighting against the finance bill. And I know there's more Shujaas after today because we have to fight these 8 bills, which are heinous bills, very, very lethal and unconstitutional and completely regrettable to have ever been signed on the day a Shujaa had died. In fact, the signing of those bills was a sign that Ruto was actually burying all the fights that have been made by the Shujaas of the first liberation and the second liberation within 72 hours when Odinga was being buried. So I want to tell all Kenyans out there, do not give up. Don't cry too much so that your tears can stop you. Actually, as you mourn Raila Odinga, people are still mourning. For us in Luo community, we are still mourning. No one is even allowed to go and dig. No one should even to go work. We are still mourning, but as you mourn, don't mourn too long. Don't keep tears in your eyes for too long to stop seeing you from the sunrise, because there are more Shujaas to come. And I can say, as they said, the best Shujaa has not yet been born.
All right. Thank you, Professor Ogola. And yes, this is indeed our special coverage of Mashujaa Day celebrations 2025. And we'll momentarily go back to the Ithokwe Stadium, the venue of this year's Mashujaa Day celebrations in Kitui County. My colleague Josh Onsare, I do understand, is on standby to get us more from the stadium. Do we have Onsare? Yes, Josh, good morning once again. Back to you to give us more updates from the Ithokwe Stadium as preparations for Mashujaa Day celebrations continue.
Asante sana Fred Ndimuli, na asubuhi njema kweli kweli kutoka kaunti hii ya Kitui, kutoka uwanja huu wa Ithokwe. Sherehe ambazo zinajiri wakati ambapo taifa limemwomboleza aliyekuwa waziri mkuu Raila Odinga, amezikwa hapo jana katika kaunti ya Siaya, eneo la Bondo, na wengi wamemwomboleza kama shujaa. Na tunapozungumzia sherehe za mashujaa, ni wale wa Kenya ambao wamejitolea kutoa mchango wao katika sekta mbalimbali kuhakikisha Wakenya wananawiri na kustawi kwa njia ambayo inafaa. Na vile vile Fred, tunapozungumzia sherehe hizi za mashujaa, kauli mbiu ya mwaka huu imekuwa kuangazia ule umeme na vile vile ustawi na vile vile ukuaji wa kawi wa taifa hili, na ndio masuala ambayo yamekuwa yakiangaziwa pakubwa hivi sasa kwa sababu ni mambo ya sasa. Na hapa katika uwanja wa Ithokwe hivi sasa shughuli nzima iko karibu kuanza. Wakazi washamiminika hapa, maafisa wa usalama wameshika doria, na nitakuwa nazungumza na baadhi ya wakazi tusikie hisia zao. Wameamka mapema, kipi kimewavutia kuweza kufika hapa, ili tuweze kujua ni kipi wangependa kukisema kuhusiana na sherehe hizi za mashujaa, sherehe za kwanza kabisa kuwaifanyika katika kaunti hii. Na jiunge nasi mtazamaji, ili tuweze kusikiliza hisia zao, na moja kwa moja ningependa kusikia jina lako na hivi sasa unahudhuria sherehe za kwanza za mashujaa katika kaunti hii. Unaitwa nani na unajisikiaje?
Majina naitwa Boniface Motoa. Mimi ni mkaaji wa Kitui. Najivunia kuwa na Mashujaa Day ya kwanza na kuhudhuriwa na rais wetu wa Ruto kuwa huku kwetu Kitui. Ni matarajio yangu sherehe itakuwa sawa kwa mapenzi yake Mwenyezi Mungu. Na sioni kama kutaanza kuwa na umbaya, naona mambo iko shwari.
Na hivi sasa tunaona kwamba hii ndio stadium ya kwanza kabisa ambayo imejengwa hapa, stadium kubwa sana. Unajisikiaje kama kijana wa kaunti?
Mimi najisikia poa sababu stadium mwanzo imejengwa mzuri, sijaiona ingine Ukambani. Hii ndio ya kwanza. Tunashukuru sana kwa rais wetu na gavana wetu Malombe.
Shukran sana mzee. Habari za sasa, labda utuambie jina. Mzee amesema hana la kusema, acha tusikilize hisia za wakazi wengine. Mama, kuna sauti ya kusema kuhusiana na sherehe hizi, unajisikiaje kama mama kuwa hapa asubuhi?
Kwa majina anaitwa Catherine Ndanu, nimetoka Mwingi Central. Nafurahi sana kuwa hapa Kitui, mambo ni mazuri, security iko tight, nasi tunasikia furaha kwa sababu hatujaiona hivyo tena.
Na hivi sasa tumeona kwamba kuna maendeleo ambayo yameendelea. Tulikuwa tunapita barabarani, tunaona kwamba kuna barabara ambazo zimekarabatiwa. Hapo mnajisikia?
Tunasikia vizuri sisi Wakamba juu hatujaiona tena, maendeleo iko poa ya President Ruto. Sasa tumetambulika, hatujaiona hivyo tena.
Labda ujumbe wako ni upi kwa Wakenya, wakazi wa kaunti ya Kitui?
Wakazi wa Kitui ni furaha tu, sababu ni Mungu tu.
Shukran sana mzee. Inakuaje?
Sawa.
Labda unasisikiaje na sherehe hizi?
Iko sawa kabisa. Na salamu iko sawa, inaendelea vizuri. Na tunafurahi sana kwa sababu iko sawa. Sina mengi.
Ujumbe wako kwa wakazi wa Kitui?
Mimi ni mkazi wa Kitui. Kitui inaendelea vizuri. Sina maneno mengine.
Asante sana. Ndo hisia za wakazi wa kaunti hii ya Kitui hivi sasa, wakiendelea kusubiri Rais William Ruto ambaye ni mgeni wa heshima ambaye atafika hapa ili kuweza kuanzisha shughuli nzima ya sherehe hizi za mashujaa mwaka 2025. Fred Ndimuli, hali ndivyo ilivyo. Tutazidi kukusanya taarifa na vilevile kuzungumza na wakazi kuhusiana na shughuli nzima ambayo hiko hapa, na tunapoendelea kuzungumza hivi sasa maafisa usalama wanashika doria, na mnasa picha yangu akikuonesha tu kwa kifupi, utaona kwamba kila mtu amefika hapa, wakazi maelfu, kwa sababu uwanja huu unastahimili watu 10,000 na tunaona kila kitu kiko shwari kabisa, na viwambo ama ukipenda screens zimeweza kutundikwa hapa kwa ajili ya kusaidia wakazi ambao wako mbali na jukwaa ambalo Rais William Ruto atakuwa anahutubu kutoka. Na hivi sasa tunaona kwamba shughuli zinaendelea hivi sasa, maafisa usalama, na vilevile ukiangalia kwa umbali kwenye picha ambayo iko kwenye kiwambo chako, kuna vijana wanafunzi ambao wamekaa pale, ambao wako katika lile kundi la kutumbuiza. Wote hao kwa pamoja wanasubiri tu wakiinua bendera ya taifa kuonesha uzalendo katika shughuli hii ya mashujaa, sherehe ambazo zimekuwa zikizunguka kila kaunti kuhakikisha ule ustawi unaendelea, na ni wakati ambapo zilianzishwa wakati wa Rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta, na wakazi tumeweza kusikia wakisema kwamba hizi sherehe zimesaidia kwenda katika kila kaunti kwa sababu zinaboresha na vilevile kuinua na kuimarisha maendeleo katika maeneo ambayo sherehe hizi zinafanyika. Na tumesikiliza sauti za wakazi wakisema kwamba ni hatua kubwa kwa kaunti hii ya Kitui kuweza kuwa mwenyeji wa sherehe hizi za mashujaa, na ni kuarifu kwamba mwaka huu tutaona kwamba wale watu ambao ni watu 184 ambao wameweza kutambuliwa kuwa mashujaa watakuwa wanatuzwa na vilevile kutambuliwa na Rais William Ruto, na tulikuwa tumezungumza nao awali wakisema kwamba ni nafasi murwa kabisa ya kila Mkenya kujitokeza na kuwa shujaa ili kuweza kupigania amani na kuhakikisha yule ustawi wa taifa unaendelea humu nchini. Hivyo basi tunazidi kukutaarifu na tutaendelea kukusanya taarifa ili tukujuze mtazamaji wetu kutoka eneo hili la Kitui. Fred Ndimuli, ndo hali ilivyo. Usukani kwako, endelea kututaarifu.
Asante sana Josh Onsari, ripota wetu kule Kitui Ithokwe Stadium, ambapo sherehe za Mashujaa Day mwaka huu 2025 zitakuwa zikiendelea zikiongozwa na Rais William Ruto. Thank you so much for that report, and we'll be coming back to you for more on that. Gentlemen, I now want us to go back and reflect on the events of the last few days. And of course, even Mashujaa Day itself, even the naming, could be a direct result of some of the push for constitutional amendments that Raila Odinga was part of as well. And if we could start from that perspective, before we even talk about the politics, that discussions around progression in as far as constitutionality is concerned, constitutionalism is concerned in Kenya. Raila Odinga was really key, and before he even departed, his probably one of the lone voices that was still eager to improve on our constitution. His push for BBI, his push for NADCO. He was keen to ensure that this constitution gets to a point where it's more ideal than what we have. Do you feel like we've lost momentum with the exit of Raila Odinga in as far as constitutionalism is concerned?
Well, there are many ways to look at it, and the way Mr. Raila Odinga was described yesterday, actually from the day he passed on, he was many things to many people. There are others who would consider him a hero, I mean, deserving to be a Shujaa today, because his fingerprints in the Kenyan political space are just everywhere when it comes to the constitution making, even for the repeal of Section 2A. But even as we learn from America, wherever you produce a document, a sacred document like the Constitution, there is merit in continuously reviewing the document to ensure that it's aligned to national and public interest at all times. So I see nothing wrong. But the challenge we have in most countries, that most of the time when the Constitution is reviewed, is not necessarily aligned to national and public interest, is aligned to a few political personalities. For instance, there's a conversation around the Kilifi draft, whether Kenya should go parliamentary way, pure parliamentary way, or pure presidential way. And a few powerful politicians, just as a flick of their fingers, they took a decision. They said, we are not going the parliamentary way, we are not going pure presidential way, maybe we are going to have a mix. So even when you talk about reviewing the Constitution, we should be asking ourselves, whose interests are we actually serving? And politicians score a very strong A in making ordinary Mura or Alima believe that whatever they're doing is actually aligned to the national and public interest. But in my view, we need to review the document continuously so that it keeps on serving people. And then for Mr. Raila Odinga, he sat in a very unique place because for over 50 years, he influenced politics in Kenya in a manner unprecedented. Because he's among the few politicians who had capacity to cause political instability in Kenya, who had capacity to cause economic instability in Kenya. That is why he's the only politician who has had a handshake in all manners with everybody in Kenya apart from President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, the founding father of the nation. And then there are people who actually accuse Mr. Raila Odinga that sometimes those handshakes were not really aligned to national and public interest, that he was serving his selfish interests, and they accuse him of making deals. You know, like for instance, if you speak to his close supporters, they say he won the 2007 election. And they said, by accepting to join the so-called Nusumkata administration, he actually betrayed his supporters, who said that probably he had a better chance of winning had he stayed out, or really pushed to make sure that there was a structured way of doing that.
Okay, and we'll come back to discuss his politics. It's this issue about the constitutionalism of this country that I want us to dispense with first, because Raila Odinga was known even to go for the not so comfortable conversations, go against the grain. He was very vocal, especially on the push to actually include CDF, to entrench CDF in the constitution. And at some point, he was a lone voice in the last few months of his life in that push, because most other politicians do support those funds. And now he's no longer there. Do you see a case where now politicians will be free to run amok and do whatever they want with that document without a proper pushback from Raila?
Yes, from a constitutional angle, I agree with Mr. Mukwa to some extent that Raila Odinga, in terms of the reforms, constitutional and legal reforms in this country, has been the most consequential person since 1990. Because in 1990 is when him and Matiba and Rubia, this push for Sabasaba and their detention, then we get multi-party democracy, and then the events that start taking place from there. He's been at the heart of it. It leads to the new constitution. Personally, I came, the first time we met Raila Odinga was during the time, just as a youth, when the meetings could be called at Uhuru Park. And then we would do those Saba meetings. And that's the time I first met his courage, that all the time he was the leader who would be there leading the youth in agitation for reform. So he's at the heart of it. And therefore his death, as you are indicating, would have unseen consequences. There are three that we can start with. Let's start first of all with CDF that you have specifically mentioned. I am on the same side with Honorable Raila Odinga on the issue of CDF. CDF should not be there at all. And, but this is popular. It is popular with President William Ruto. It is popular with the MPs for the simple reason, and most of the political actors, that it effectively, let's call it for what it is bluntly, it enables MPs like the president to campaign using public finance. So that is what is at the root of what we call political corruption, that people can be able to use public funds in order to pretend that they are better than their colleagues. But there are also the second bigger opportunities that one would have. His contribution, for example, to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the issue of devolution, that one is the most important one of the most consequential. But unfortunately, the dream of devolution is mixed in the sense that whereas you would have expected devolutions to empower local communities with some assistance from the government, and people then can be able to do some things for themselves. Most devolved governments are largely employment bureaus and spending departments of the national government. So there is nothing much that has been happening on that front of devolution. So it's so much, it remains a promise. It is yet to deliver anything of significance across the country. There are a few symbols of the so-called development and devolution, but I believe there was more that was expected. Finally, on multi-party democracy. Multi-party democracy, Raila has been both a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that by having ODM as an important party that has been the pillar of democracy towards any government that has been in power, a modicum of what multipartyism was supposed to be has been there. But as you can see, over the last 3-4 election cycles, is that he starts off, because he has failed to win the elections, he starts off as the official opposition. But in the middle, he ends up joining the oppressive regime of the day. So that when you join the oppressive regime of the day, it ends up defeating the whole idea of multi-party democracy. Because even like this BBG government, one, it is absolutely unconstitutional, because and clearly goes against multi-party democracy, because both the so-called minority and majority are all speaking or the same language of Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza, you can hear the voices now who appear, the conservative forces in control of ODM. They have the same presidential candidate. They are all saying yesterday, we are all for President Ruto as our presidential candidate. So that is a spite on multi-party democracy, particularly when the largest party that at the same time you say, we are the official opposition, but you are the bedmate of the oppressor. Okay. So these are let down.
On issues devolution, Raila Odinga was one of the biggest voices, even in all his presidential campaigns, pushing for more resources to go to the counties, and he made it part of his campaigns. No other politician talked much about devolution in as far as increasing resources, even pushing more services towards the counties. His latest one, I think, during the devolution conference this year was that even education should be fully devolved. With the absence of this voice that constantly thought about how to better devolution, more resources, more services down there, what do you feel is the future of devolution?
Yeah, Fred, before I answer that question, over the last few days since Raila Odinga passed, you've seen so many things that have happened which are highly unprecedented. And people have been trying to understand them, make, let's say, sense out of them. But I will say, all that this can be summarized, including devolution conversation, it is BAMBA. Why am I trying to say that? There are so many things which he has done, even including what my brother Wakili Kibu Ngai is trying to talk about. If you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus was understood after resurrection. When the disciples saw him tell them, put the net deep into the sea to get the fish, then the disciple that Jesus loved the most, disciple John, which is in John 21 verse 7, says, it is the Lord. They recognized Jesus only after they have been able to get the fish they wanted. Meaning that people tended to understand Raila after they have gotten something they didn't understand what he was fighting for. Look at the Constitution of Kenya 2010. When he refused the Constitution, he went orange, and orange versus banana. People thought Raila was just fighting a battle of winning the election. But when 2010 Constitution came in, when he went and accepted it, people said, oh, so it is BAMBA. Why was Nyayo too full that people had to be shot so that people can be controlled? It is BAMBA. A funeral on Sunday by SEK has never happened in years. Even if you go US, they'll tell you to wait. It is BAMBA. People went into numbers never seen before. Enemies and foes. In fact, even Raila's enemies were trying to talk positively about him. Why? It is BAMBA. So if you look at even how he has done his things, is great. The second thing to make you understand this is that Raila had a vision. In fact, when you went to listen to these people making stories yesterday, eulogies that are very long, there's something which was missing in all of them. Forget about devolution. I never saw anybody who talked about their vision. Because most of those leaders who have become leaders, Raila has been a political asset where those who blame him, make it. Those who praise him, make it. So the Railaphobia, Railaphilia, both of them have worked for people. Only one person who surprised me, Mama Ida. Mama Ida says something remarkable. And I think out of all speeches, that is the speech that I go with. Let us focus on building national wealth over personal wealth. And that's where devolution can now go into. These governors who got the benefits of devolution, are they building county wealth? Are they building national wealth? Or they are building personal wealth? You could see, for example, all these guys who became governors, they became governors with 6 manifestos, isn't it? The first manifesto is RAO, Raila Amolo Odinga. Someone can shout that for the whole rally and they become a governor. Then the second set, which is ODM, Orange Democratic Movement. You hear when Joho became governor of Mombasa. If you remember, all Johos rally, analyze them. They say, Hapa ni ODM. Our leader is Raila Amolo Odinga. But Raila wanted this devolution to bring resources to the people. That's why he was talking about it, even the very last minute that he was actually given a chance to talk about it. But how much have the leaders taken devolution to the interests of Kenyans rather than for making themselves rich? How many governors are in court? How many governors are accused of corruption? How much pending bills are killing people in villages where you go to? I'm sure that Raila was idealistic at some point, and I'm sure, Kibe, I want to ask you today, and even Dismas, please forgive Raila for all those things we are saying for today. And let me tell you one thing. All of us are short of something. Raila was an idealist in the Constitution, but the side now come to implementation, this time Raila became pragmatic. Like when he was talking about devolution, he thought that angels will be elected to become governors. When he talked about CDF, we thought MPs will be ideal leaders. But then when we elected hyenas in these positions, it became very difficult to actually make devolution work. Look, Fred, I've always analyzed for you here. Siaya County, where the battle took place, have received 130 billion since we began devolution. If 130 billion is a core capital, you can set up around 13 banks. 13 banks like KCB. You can set up cycle-like banks. 13 banks like KCB. KCB has employed how many people? How many people are employed in Siaya County? You cannot even collect garbage. So Raila was an idealist, but now towards the end, Raila must have tried to be a pragmatist by saying, you can't change the system by choking it. Try to go inside. Unfortunately, this second one is always very, very dicey, and sometimes does not happen. But I would say that Raila Odinga has done what he has done.
But the question now is, and my concern is that, okay, fine, because we're talking about transition, and we'll talk about the political transition and the challenges therein. But on this conversation about constitutionalism and the progressive, ensuring that our constitution is progressively being amended, now in the absence of Raila Odinga, do you see any other big voice that is going to push us towards that?
That's I told you the problem was that you listen to all those leaders. Is either, now that Raila is gone, let us join Ruto. Is that a vision? So I told you that lack of vision is the biggest problem, because Raila Odinga had this called social democracy. That's why Raila Odinga set up ODM, Orange Democratic Movement, which its manifesto is a social democracy. But what is happening is that these people whom I'm hearing are all succession in ODM, what vision do they have? They have always hung on his coat to achieve what they want. And some people have no vision, only blaming Raila makes them. In this kind of a setup, a new leadership will emerge, Fred. And the leadership is emerging outside this formation. And I can tell you, the new Kenya will be born outside ODM, UDA, Kenya Kwanza arrangement, because those systems are incapable
if we look
of taking Kenya where we are going.
Across the political divide, we do not have any other notable voice when it comes to matters constitution. It is only Raila Odinga. Now, I'm wondering, okay, fine, we may focus too much on India and ODM.
Fred, that's not accurate. Because
I know you're a member of the United Opposition. Let me give that.
There are so many things we've done that you guys rubbish out by saying there's nobody. Some of us have been arrested and gone to cell 12 times.
I asked you that question directly. You did not give me that answer.
Who was the first person?
Do we have a voice? You went to ODM.
See, I've told you this is going to rise outside that establishment.
Okay, you know, it's in physics where we are told that a vacuum cannot exist. So suggesting that there will be nobody to fill that vacuum, in my view, it would be erroneous. We'll obviously get personalities who will fill the vacuum, probably not using Mr. Raila Odinga's DNA. Like, for instance, for the last couple of days, Mr. Rigathi Gachagua has come up as a very strong voice, because what Kenya would need at all times is that powerful voice that can look at the administration of the day and call it out. You recall when Mr. Raila Odinga joined the broad-based administration, then he toned down on many issues of accountability, on many issues of governance, and then that is when Mr. Rigathi Gachagua came up. So, of course,
it matters constitution?
It's going to be filled. He's been speaking about the constitution, he's been speaking about many issues, but again, there are some issues that I want us to address. You have to credit Mr. Raila Odinga for taking unpopular decisions, but at the same time, they are the right decisions, because a weak leader will always take populist decisions. So Mr. Raila at some stage took unpopular decisions, especially on the matters you made reference to CDF and others, knowing very well that even elected leaders within his political parties love CDF, but he's taking that firm decision. And then we've become in Kenya, I think, embraced a certain form of politics that we consider political competition to be political enemies. The fact that you're on different paths and you go on a campaign trail and use all manner of language, it does not actually mean that you are political, you are enemies. It's only that you are engaging in a political competition. And that is how Aida's speech comes in, because she wants Kenyans to be very careful on people you may brand to be as your enemies or friends. And people gave credit to her speech, including PCS Musalia Mudavadi. And in my view, that speech now must be studied, because she's been in the political space for a very long time, and she knows something that the majority of Kenyans
Allow me to rephrase this question, because I feel like we are missing it, because I'm looking for the voice that is pushing for the defense or progressive improvement of our constitution. And I'm looking at voices like back in the day when Raila was still there was a civil society, there was a church, and all these voices were very strong. Right now, in as far as constitution matters are concerned, most voices are dimmed. Raila's stood out. In his absence, who else? And when I ask this, I'm not getting the answer. I'm just being told.
I'll try to give you.
Please do.
Now, anybody expecting to have another Raila Odinga soon should not hope for that. He is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of people, like Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi, whom he kept talking about. You will not have a Lionel Messi soon. You may have somebody like Lamine Yamal, who is a very good footballer with a capacity to go up there. People like Pele, it took so long to have another person who could say like he's one of the GOATs. So the GOATs are few, even in politics. So we do not expect like there would be another huge voice like Raila Odinga anytime soon. And this we also need to understand. It has got everything to do with the political party that he built. There was a you need to understand the Cold War politics. When Cold War politics, you had Russia and America. Everybody who would get a strong political party, then you would end up having a voice that cannot be ignored. There will not be another ODM soon. And they keep saying Raila was ODM and ODM was Raila Odinga. So that it has got everything to do with the fact that his lifetime contribution in real terms, it is embodied in the party known as ODM. So ODM, as we speak now, is more likely to die than remain the big voice that is going to be. And having mentioned that, you go back to what they are saying. The Gen Z, who are now, and other reformers, and that's why you can marry everybody's contribution, is that nature abhors a vacuum. As long as there is tyranny, there is definitely going to be the
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's mind. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change.
Park, land law.
The future is...
These are the deals that people engage in on a daily civil cases, on a day-to-day basis. But what are we doing? We are doing cases with the professor here with regard to Albert and other issues. Why? Because when there is tyranny, you end up now doing probably 50%, you are doing commercial work, 50%, you are doing protest work. So the churches, and also I commend them, increasingly having critical voices emerging everywhere. You are having even organization, trade unions, and other people that previously used to be conservative, speaking up. When you see the result of the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, for all practical purposes, personally, I thought Ruto was going to be re-elected had Gachagua not been impeached. Because I believe as long as Gachagua was there, Ruto was going to get at least 40%, in Mount Kenya, which was going to be sufficient for him to get re-elected. But the good thing about this is that tyrants commit many mistakes. He will commit several mistakes with regard to how he wants to capture ODM, because he might do it in a way, for example, these old politicians who do not even represent the future of the Luo. Okay. He may also be able to, even these laws, like the laws that he was passing the other day, these are laws that you are trying to recreate a dictatorship.
Yes.
So cumulatively, as I finish that point, cumulatively you arrive at a situations whereby even if people do not come with their own initiatives, they will be forced to react. Yes. And those reactions would be sufficient momentum to the reform cause.
But we all agree that probably there will be a lull in as far as constitution reform or discussions around constitution reforms is concerned. Political pushback and criticism of the government will be there, but in as far as constitution reform, that's my focus, that there will be a lull before probably one of these institutions, either the church or the civil society, gets back to the conversation.
Actually, he was not part of the recent reform movements. He was actually on the side of the oppressor, if you can call the truth. Well, because all these times when people have, even in the constitutional space, because when all some of these events that have been occurring, when you criticize Ruto, for example, about signing these laws, what is it that we should also be talking about? That basically the ODM supported these laws in parliament. Let us not forget that.
Yes. And sometimes when you discuss about the constitution, we may get lost in looking at UD and Kenya Kwanza and the president. But these discussions transcend even the regime of the day. That the constitution reform discussion will continue even beyond William Ruto.
Fred, there is, as a leadership expert, there's something called situational leadership. Situational leadership is a leadership that comes out of a situation. For example, when the senior Kenyatta died, Uhuru Kenyatta was just a young boy trying to mourn his father. He was not even prepared to lead that family, but he had to emerge. People said he had a lot of issues running against him, age, minus experience, isn't it? And many other things. And he emerged and ruled this country. Look at the mayor of New York, who was seen to be the most useless mayor in the history of the US. When the Twin Towers were hit, he emerged and he was a Forbes front page as the man of the year. And Fred, let me tell you what, there's an African saying, and this saying is also very clear with religious terms, that God chases flies from the ass of a cow which has no tail. So now that Raila is gone, God will improvise a tail for this cow that do not have a tail at the moment. And somebody will emerge, and actually they are emerging. That's first. And secondly, and most importantly, Gen Zs have done what Raila Odinga could not do. In all the demonstration Raila did, they never entered parliament. Tell me one single day. In fact, the last one they are trying to do after the election, even Raila could not access Harambee Avenue. Remember those water cannons, isn't it? And those bullets that are being shot at him almost killed him. It was so heartbreaking for me. I used to come to this studio almost when this man was on the other side. He was always defending this current government, and I was defending Raila Odinga throughout, and I was telling people how that was dangerous. Whatever that, and I can tell you, the Gen Zs have done it in a way that you cannot believe, without a single leader like that. In fact, it might continue like that, and I'm telling you, next week, wait you're going to see what will happen. Tuesday, tomorrow is a curtain raiser. Thursday will be big. And then after that, depending on how the government responds...
How would you point out that Gen Zs have been involved in the reform agenda? Because, okay, fine, no, they may be seeking regime change, and they may actually achieve it.
On my TikTok live, there's someone called Mtetesi Musa. Actually, he's telling me that whatever we are discussing here, we are not privy to what is going on in the Gen Z groups. Because currently, there's a lot of organization going on. You know, Raila Odinga had got the luxury of ODM and the structure and the money, isn't it? Look at a demonstration done when he didn't even use that money. He didn't even use his leaders. In fact, some of them are being told, stay at home, we shall do it our way. And they did much better. Remember, there is no demonstration Raila Odinga did that led to a cabinet being dissolved. They dissolved the cabinet. the mandamano that was done to the point, so constitution, do you know Gen Z said that they were given the constitution by Kibaki and Raila. And that is what even is enabling them to get habeas corpus when they're arrested, isn't it? Giving them the political freedom they're having. They are enjoying what Raila had done. And actually Raila has done what he was supposed to do. And I think Raila said he finished his work. Anybody who thinks Raila has unfinished business like Business Daily says, that is Business Daily's perspective. But I'm telling you, God created all of us. If God knows you have not finished your business, you don't go. Me, I'm a Catholic. I believe strongly as a Christian. Let us believe Raila finishes work. And lastly, if I end, I don't want to talk long because I want us to engage here. Most of these people are suffering from the founder syndrome. When Walt Disney, who is the founder of Walt Disney, Walt died, the founder of Walt Disney died, the CEOs took 50 years time to say, oh, if Walt was here, if Walt was there, come on. I lost my father as a young boy. I looked at my family, rolled my sleeves, and took them to school. Our last born has graduated as a master's from Strathmore. He has bought his car, he's married with a child. Come on, why can we look at, where is Raila Odinga? Let's just stop that nonsense and realize Raila said himself with his own words, I've seen the mountaintop. I want to get there with you, but you'll get there together, but not with me. Raila said, I'm Moses, Joshua will come. That Joshua, don't look for Moses. Moses is Raila. Look for Joshua, is another person. Okay. Joshua now is the young people. Okay. And if you are thinking there's a vacuum, there is none. To know there's no vacuum, wait what will happen to Ruto's 8 bills. Secondly, you saw me taking a petition to court that we gave these people 21 days. EACC will be disbanded. Mark my word, that's nothing, because EACC has spent 58.5 billion in budget since they began, because they have a budget of 3.9 billion per year. They have just gobbled that money and recovered 28 billion. How do you spend 58 billion to recover 5? We are going to disband it.
And finally, you get to the conversation I want us to talk about.
When I tell you now, if I tell you I'm the leader, you'll tell me I'm joking. But look here. I left Strathmore 3 years ago. Where do I work? I wake up every day to ensure this government put to accountability. And I can tell you with the public voice I have, it will not end. And I can tell you Raila has so many spirits he's left in many of us. Okay. And that spirit is now with many people. No, if one person has a virus, it is contained. But if a virus is covering the whole village, even if it's HIV, people die of it. So the virus of Raila Odinga has been widespread.
Thank you for
the way you saw it in Nyayo, the way you saw it in Kasarani, and Kisumu and Bondo. That spirit is undying until it will eat up everybody who is thinking that we cannot do it.
Let's not talk about politics. Matters constitution reform, and as you say, we'll have to wait and see. A Joshua will rise. And probably we will continue with this because 15 years on, that discussion about the constitution and how best to improve it, I think Raila Odinga carried that burden. Now, with his exit, we wait for Joshua probably to show up. But when it comes to politics, and this played out openly yesterday, yes, that as expected, it is now pure fight for survival for most of those who are inside ODM especially. Let's focus on ODM because it also was mentioned in that issue about constitutional reforms. Do you feel that ODM as a party could still be able to carry some of those conversations that Raila had and were close to his heart? Or do you feel like many other people that this is the end of ODM, those conversations will have to go to someone else?
The challenge with many political parties, and we've said these are times above number, is that majority of the political parties, probably all, are no more than special purpose vehicles held together by powerful political personalities. So Mr. Raila Odinga was the glue holding together ODM, and in his absence, probability of the ODM as we know it collapsing is extremely high. Nobody should be surprised if you have ODM A, B, ODM Asili, all those kind of formations coming up, because the person who carried the vision, the person who was the glue, and the person who had capacity to inflict pain and the pleasure at the same time is Mr. Raila Odinga, is not around. And from yesterday's speeches you saw, in fact, there was a competition on who spoke with Mr. Raila Odinga last and which word is going to prevail. So there's a group of people who said, and they even said this in their mother tongue, that Mr. Raila Odinga's last word and wish was that they stay in government, broad-based. And that was a speech in good part by cabinet ministers. And you would understand why they're making that position, because, you know, politics is all about self-preservation and making deals. And then there was a smaller group which said that Raila's position was that 2027 is not cast in iron, so that ODM needs to take a position. Now, when you start having those catfights, then we'll see how they're going to deploy resources. And then Mr. President Ruto indicated that as a founder member of ODM, is not going to allow anybody to run away with the political party. So there's a very high probability that the persons so described as radicals are going to find themselves increasingly fizzled out, and they may have to look for another option. Because one wing is very happy with the status quo, and you can even see the way they did the election for the acting party leader. It was done in the middle of the mourning process. I mean, even before the body would land in Kenya, a committee had already taken a position that it is the acting party leader. Now, one would have expected that ODM, describing itself as a democratic party, a decision would be taken in a manner that reflects democracy. And many people were the view that if you wanted to fill that position as a matter of urgency, maybe you should have given it to Professor James Anyang' Nyong'o, who held forth when Mr. Raila Odinga wanted to be the AUC boss. But then again, you see political inheritance, that it's Mr. Raila Odinga's elder brother who's been given that position, and Mr. Dr. Oburu Odinga's position on broad-based government is well known. It's cast in iron. So probability of there being a rift is extremely high. And then finally, you saw what Mr. Hassan Joe said. And he spoke in Swahili and said that if anybody wants to take over the political party, yeye ndio tutamfukuza. While Mr. Mbadi was very dramatic, he was very emotional, he was actually sweating when he said that ODM shall stick within the administration. But now that is a challenge with our political party politics in Kenya, that it's just that one personality. And the moment he exits, then
and we had,
becomes a complicated
just going back by the conversations we had yesterday, including what the president said about that party, that it would appear he's very much interested in assuming the leadership of ODM party. He may not have said that directly in so many words, but basically that's what he said. That, but of what benefit would a party that's falling apart be for the president? He must be feeling that he's able to unite that party and ensure that he, if at all is to inherit the leadership, that it will come as a bloc. Do you feel the president is misguided when it comes to that?
It's interesting. For a while, you've been having a political civil war in ODM, even when Baba was alive. And the civil war arise from BBG, broad-based government, and the future of the party. Will the party continue to carry its identity, which mainly in the Kenyan politics expresses itself by having a presidential candidate? That's a key issue. Or are you going to go into a situation whereby, like Amani and Ford Kenya, be part of the Ruto political machinery? Now, the opinion amongst the leaders, elected leaders, that has been divided even when Baba was alive. Baba had not, he could say as 50% of him was for one side, the other 50% was for the other side. Now, in his absence, now that he died, the critical issue that will play itself out appears to be two things. One, who will continue to be responsible for the machinery, the party machinery, the party receiving money that is supposed to be received for political parties fund, and be able to carry out your activities and officially make decisions as ODM. The second one relates to what the Secretary General, Senator Sifuna, was talking about. What is the actual view of the ordinary supporter of ODM? Because it is one thing, and that must have explained why Baba was cautious about this. I think there was a feeling, and I have perceived it, with the very many forums where I am with people from across the country, that very many young people do not see President Ruto and his party as holding a good future for them. But the leaders, because they are immediate benefits, to say, uko kwa serikali. Because even all this idea of you are in government or you are out of government, actually for ordinary Kenyan, no ordinary Kenyan is in or outside government. Government does the same thing. It taxes everybody. There are no shops for supporters of Kenya Kwanza or supporters of the opposition. The shops are the same. But at the leadership levels, it might explain. Probably you go to Harambee House to receive some allowances. So there might actually be benefits. But these are not people, even the entire Luo Nyanza. They'll never even hit 1 million. Even if they all say we are in government, people who would be receiving some stipends to signify that they're in government will never reach 1,000. So the rest of the people will have to be what is it that is good for yourself. And therefore, when you understand it that way, then you understand that now the critical issue would be, is like where the father in a homestead is dead. The mother, there is a stepfather. Some children say, we want to go with a stepfather, and some of the sons are saying, we want to remain in our homestead and build the homestead. Now, the group that wants to go with their stepfather, who wants to go under the guardianship of William Ruto, and have already declared him their candidate, unfortunately, might be the people who might take the institutional reins of ODM. And if that happens, and this other group who says you want to rebuild afresh to remain in our homestead, it will mean that from a legal point of view, you may have to come up with a political view that expresses your desires and objectives going into the future. So the breakup of ODM, as long as now a stepfather says, this homestead is going to be mine, and not everybody thinks is legitimate, that is how the trouble will come in.
Because the existence of ODM, at least for the next 22-3 months, will be crucial, not just for the president, but even for the workings of parliament. If we go with that analogy that, yes, there will be a split, those who are willing to go with William Ruto, those who are not so sure, do you expect that now even the way ODM has been working in parliament, fully supporting the UDA side, that will change?
Fred, to understand this thing, let me give you a mold to look at it. Are we discussing about people or leadership conversation? If it's about people, is whether ODM will continue to be good for people or it is only going to serve the leader's interest. Has ODM over the years served the interest of the Kenyan people? Has ODM always served the interest of the counties that have gotten ODM giving them a governor? Like if you go to Kisumu, Siaya, Homa Bay, Migori, you go to Mombasa, Kilifi, Kwale, maybe I don't know all of them, but basically even Nairobi has given, ODM has produced a governor. When Kidero was a governor for ODM, what did Nairobians see? Go to Orengo with all his speeches he makes. What has he seen? What is Homa Bay getting? So if it's about leadership, then we are discussing about the survival of those leaders of ODM. But if it's about the people of who have voted for ODM, including Ukambani, will ODM continue being relevant to them? How is ODM relevant in Western Kenya, given what Western Kenya has given ODM? So if it's about relevance of ODM, I don't see it. But it's about survival of those who have been privileged in ODM. They will survive, of course, because Mbadi is a CS, or Piwanda is a CS. They'll thrive. They will thrive even if they don't get anything. They have money already. They have a capital. Now they can buy houses. I see them buying houses at 100 million in cash they can buy. The second thing for you to look at is, after all that happened yesterday, we did analysis, and I'll give you analysis how ODM looks like. Before I told you ODM is in 8 factions, now 3 factions emerged. And the first faction, if I read here, is the people say, led by Wanga, saying, Baba left us in government. So that has UNET, Mbadi is there, Millie Odhiambo, all those people. That's one faction. The second faction is called Baba fought for a good country. And Anyang Nyong was there. I said Baba wanted us to protect devolution. Baba called us another ODM founders and want to celebrate together. So the last group says 20 days before Baba left, he told us that we support Ruto. So those are three groups. So which group do you belong? And which group is ODM now? Is ODM saying that Baba told us to support Ruto, Baba left us in government, or Baba fought for good governance? Now, the minority are the ones saying Baba fought for good governance. Therefore, if those are the people with the people, but the rest about their stomach, where are they safe and where is next? So, Fred, if you understand these things, you have to understand that the very few people are talking about governance. The rest are talking about politics.
If you look at the numbers, parliamentary numbers, does that affect the tyranny that now the BBG support base within parliament? Does that affect the numbers there?
What will happen is that the people there will look for what benefits they can get because envelopes are in parliament anyway. And let me tell you what, Fred, there is no party which has locus of control in parliament. I've always told you, the time we shall have parliament having a voice, every party should have locus of control. But once you go to parliament, every MP do not care about the party.
But if I'm hearing you right, Professor, then you say that President William Ruto is still able to marshal the entire support.
Yes, absolutely, because...
Despite the factions in ODM,
yes,
that in parliament all the numbers will still be for
yes,
the president.
That has always been the case. So let me give my submissions. After I told you that the party leader thing, I want to respond to you. I know what happens in ODM. Odinga has always been a trustee of ODM. He's a trustee by ODM. And I know all the trustees because I'm close to the party. Now, do you know why it was crucial to do that election quickly? To access the money. It's about the money. Because the party leader is a signatory. So if there is no party leader, how do you access the money? You saw what happened in Jubilee, isn't it? Who is the party leader? It's about the bank account, access to the check. So that's why it was urgent. No, money does not wait. They say in New York that money does not sleep. So money could not wait, that we are still waiting for burial. That's why it was immediately now money can move because the signatories are complete. There is the treasurer, Timothy Basire. There is the party leader who is signing, which has a veto over all accounts. So that's why it happened. Now, the other thing you talk about the promises William Ruto gave to ODM people in the funeral. This is very laughable, by the way, Fred. In fact, you must be too naive. Those ODM leaders who are dancing, you must be too naive to believe a promise in a funeral. You know, in a funeral, you can be promised anything. In fact, it will tell you, will take care of you. But today, from today is when either will know who are with them and who are just taking the popularity. You understand? And do you know what's happening, Fred? I have 3 children whom I go to church with every day in Holy Family. And they wait until we enter church, then they start asking for things they know they can't ask at home. They are crying in church. So when they are crying, I tell them, you want chocolate? I'll buy for you. Then I have to buy. You want chips? I'll promise everything to them, get them quiet so that I can listen to the word of God. So even here during a funeral, when people are crying, you tell them, don't worry, ODM, I'll take care of you. I will ensure ODM is strong, but I can tell you, it doesn't happen. Then I'm just about... no, just give me 1 minute.
No, because I want this to be a bit structured. So on this issue of numbers in Parliament, because that has been the problem in passing of legislation, that at some point, President William Ruto was getting it very easy, that everyone in ODM supported William Ruto. Do we expect that to change now that we're talking about factions? And is it enough to change the tyranny of support towards William Ruto in Parliament?
2 probabilities do exist. The first one was set in motion by the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the Honorable Sam Atandi, indicated in a social media post that from the time he was born, he's been loyal to Mr. Raila Odinga. And since the body of Mr. Raila Odinga has been lowered to the ground, is now going to be loyal to President William Samoei Ruto. Now, as we indicated early on, Raila Odinga has been the only person to inflict pain and pleasure and influence the electoral outcomes. But for the remaining few months, in my view, the voting patterns are going to be driven by the members' selfish interests. And understand that at the National Assembly, and it's on record, there are so many khaki envelopes go around when there's a particular motion. And because President Ruto has indicated that he's not going to just sit back and watch the party disintegrate, he'll be very keen on the voting patterns. That is one probability. But again, on the extreme side, because when you do the scenario and sensitivity analysis, you have to look at the probabilities. On the extreme side, there's a very high chance that because Mr. Raila Odinga is no longer in town, there's a number of ODM members of parliament who voted according to his wish because of the phobia of losing the next general elections. Now that he's not around, nobody fears anything. So can you imagine a scenario if we just brand them for purposes of this conversation as ODM rebel MPs, if maybe they decide to work with Wamunyoro DCP, then they can scuttle so many, the parliamentary interest of Mr. William Samoei Ruto. But again, we understand that Mr. Ruto has completed most of his signature, the bills he was looking for, is in a good part completed them, so it may not affect his interest. However, what we must look at is the pronouncements in the next few days, because for Mr. Samatand, it was very shocking. In my village, we say that before you even start doing all these things, wait for grass to grow on, on the grave. But because he's the chairman of the Budget and the Preparations Committee, he was quick off the mile to say that my loyalty has moved. And then also what Mr. Junet Mohamed indicated, that we sat down as the leadership of the National Assembly with our members, and we have said, in the honor of Mr. Raila Odinga, we are going to implement the NADCO reports. And then the thing they were talking about, the wishes of Mr. Raila Odinga. Now, the interesting thing is, you were told that those were solo meetings. So there's no third person in the room who can verify. However, Sifuna raised a fundamental issue, which he can even convert to a campaign slogan. Who told you so? Because when you say that Mr. Raila Odinga said we must remain in government, who told you so? So he can even convert it into a campaign platform. However, probability of the ODM MPs, or rather ODM rebel MPs scuttling the parliamentary agenda for William Samoei Ruto is very slim. However, that slim probability does exist. That if they decide to gang up with folks who are aligned to DCP, then President Ruto is going to have a severe headache.
Yes, because the declaration has always been that if Baba says we go right, we go right. If he says we go left, we go left. I'm just imagining what a parliamentary group meeting for ODM will be like going forward without the presence of Baba. And because it will not be chaired by President William Ruto. Yes. But now they have to make a decision as a party.
Well, it can be chaired by its proxy.
Well, they already have a party leader. So how does that affect the workings in Parliament? Because most of these people say we only go with Baba because they believe that as long as Baba is there, then I'm assured of re-election. Yes. If he campaigns for me come 2027, if he shows up in my campaign, I'll get re-elected. Now, if William Ruto shows up in my campaign, does it guarantee my re-election?
Of course, in the areas where ODM calls the shots, you cannot say that William Ruto support will help you in getting re-elected. And the politicians, and we are entering an important year, 2026. It is in 2026 that we expect a lot of movements by politicians to know where they are headed. The politicians are smart people. Over the first 3 years, they can play ball with whoever who is buttering their bread. But in the fourth year, the tendency is going to be where are the people. In central Kenya, that one is already happening, where you find a lot of people, though they still remains with the Kenya Kwanza, the more DCP and the opposition gets traction, the more you hear even them, most of them going quiet and all these kind of things. This is going to happen in ODM. But the greatest one that I need to focus on, because it has an important constitutional implications, is the survival of the BBG. Remember, the BBG, when it was started, it was a precursor to a future coalitions between ODM and Kenya Kwanza, or UDA actually, because William Ruto appears to have abandoned Kenya Kwanza. He actually talks about UDA for practical purposes. Now, will this ever come to fruition? Will it be consummated? I do not see how it will be consummated, for the simple reason that the political arrangements under which there was going to be a future coalitions between UDA and ODM was clearly based on the notion that Raila will be able to transfer the ODM forces to UDA. Now, with the civil war that we know is happening in ODM, and you cannot foretell, chances are that William Ruto, knowing William Ruto, is likely to see that it could be easier for Atandi and all these other people who have already declared him his presidential candidate to go and officially defect to him. What would be the advantage for that for William Ruto? If William Ruto calculates that you can be able to get 50% of Luo Nyanza and 50% of the regional Raila's supporters on the basis that these people are willing to give me support without any real price, then he will get the running mate positions to give anybody else who takes themselves seriously. So that the immediate cost about this misguided enthusiasm that you see with the Luo Nyanza politics is that if you are giving yourself for free, why should I pay you? Mm-hmm. So they are likely to be consumed at no value. So that for William Ruto, it is probably a blessing in disguise that he can easily calculate, I can get so many votes in Nyanza and probably try to get the running mate positions to anybody else. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting. You cannot foretell it for now. In Parliament, it's going to be interesting also for the simple reason that simply by getting Raila Odinga and calling him in the morning, making a deal with him in the morning, then Raila Odinga could be able to call everybody yes and say, tumekubaliana. Mm-hmm. And then they would all vote his way. Now, in the absence of Raila Odinga, whom will whip them? Because whipping in Parliament is a key issue. And of course, the tendency that even as he says that so many bills have been passed, there is something which is a nightmare. Remember, with all the failures of the Kenya Kwanza regime, nobody had tried to move like James Orengo did with Moi when he moved a motion of no confidence. Mm-hmm. I believe it is overdue that an impeachment motion be moved against the current president. And that the probability that that can happen is going to be very high moving forward. And it doesn't have to succeed. Mm-hmm. It would actually be good business if they were to do it. Okay.
All right. Prof, allow me to ask you this and you'll say what you want to say also. This could be tested in the by-elections in November. It is already said that ODM is facing challenges in Nyanza, Luo Nyanza region. Places like even Kasipul and even in Ugunja probably were not automatically going towards ODM, that there was a struggle. But Raila, of course, was going to change all that. Once he shows up and campaigns for any of his party candidates, that is it. Now, what happens to the ODM candidates who are vying for elections in November 27? And do you think that this could be an indication of the party status in Nyanza?
An orphan is an orphan. So sometimes they can gain by being an orphan, and sometimes you lose by being an orphan. So sometimes it can work in their favor because, for example, sometimes we are going to resist helping them because they had a father. Like I told you, God take care of those who have no one to take care of. There are people in this world who eat for years and they do not have a father and a mother. So still possible that being an orphan, if they play that politics well by saying, now my father has died, take care of me, maybe, depends on how they play politics. But basically, ODM is dying. I wanted to tell you that ODM is not built like ANC. It's not built like CCM. So it does not matter who is the leader. ODM will fizzle on its, just like KANU has done. KANU was led by Moi. Remember, KANU even formed government, and it died. I think it's dead. What is ODM? Tell me people who are our leaders in Kanu. Look at how Kanu formed government, made ministers and CSS. Where are they? They fizzled just from the year 2002 after the election. It is a finality. We do not have political parties in Kenya. We have fraternities and sororities. These are just fraternizing. You know, when you are fraternizing, a relationship of fraternity with another person is not a family. When you want to form a family, you go direct, put a ring on somebody's finger, put them at home, and form a family. ODM was never a family. People say ODM family. What is ODM family? It's not a,
then why would William Ruto be still interested in owning that party, if at all, or controlling that party, if at all it's going to fizzle out?
Fred, you know, I've understood Ruto more than you, and you do media. What Ruto says, he means the opposite. When he said, I want to ensure ODM does not die, exactly he means the opposite. ODM must be dead. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's, as an economist, there's what's called transaction cost economics, isn't it? When you want to access a certain market, you can pick groups that makes you access the market. So before, Ruto could call Raila, and Raila will bring for him all the ODM at once. One phone call, one check, isn't it? Here, what we'll do is make all the phone calls to everyone, isn't it? And then give these checks separately in different meetings, isn't it? Then convene them. The same thing. It will be more costly, more tedious, but you'll do it. I do not see anything happening in Parliament differently. How many people were in Azimio? Just talk from Azimio. Immediately President Ruto was announced president-elect, people started running to Karen and swearing allegiances, including the MP of Ugenya, including people who are singing BAMBA like nobody's business. So I can tell you, it is just the structure of market. In business, talk about B2B. Business to business. BAMBA was doing Ruto. BAMBA was business to business. UDA to ODM, isn't it? That's business to business, B2B. Now it will be B2C. Business to customer directly. So the customer are the MPs. They are going to be bought. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, if you say Gachagua was impeached, don't laugh, Bakili. If you say Gachagua was impeached, there were two people. Ichungwa was in a house where you come and sign the bill to impeach Gachagua, you get your envelope and you move, isn't it? That one's for people in Kenya Kwanza. The other room, I have evidence, Fred, I can produce them in a court of law. The other room had UNET. You sign and you move. You get your envelope, isn't it? So this, what stops them? These guys, MPs, are just promiscuous. They want money. They'll be given. And Ruto himself said that for a bill to pass, you must be paid. He said himself. So if I'm wrong, let him also provide his evidence.
Yet some of these MPs are keen on their own political survival beyond the money, and re-election come 2027. Is it
so, Fred, if you allow me to finish, just let me allow to finish. Let me say the last word now. ODM has got serious challenges because of the fact that they don't even know the manifesto of ODM. They only knew Raila Odinga. And they're going to suffer the founder syndrome too much. And then secondly, there are too many people who are ambitious. What will happen is that their ambition will eat themselves too viciously that they are going to When Steve Jobs died, he died in a hospital. Tim Cook was with him. Then Tim Cook went and said a white lie. And he told them that Steve Jobs told me to do the following. And no one was in that room. And he could say it, and he was believed, and he made Apple move. I'm praying that anybody at least tell a white lie and sell Raila's legacy in a way that means well for the people.
All right.
But you see, Tim Cook sold it for the good of these people. So I'm telling you that all these people saying this and that, legitimacy lies. And I can tell you, ODM was a family business. It was not a public good. It will remain a family business, and therefore it will be the business of the Odingas. And the only thing is that there's no political capital those people have to propel ODM to where it belongs.
Okay. Do you agree with that assessment, that for most of those MPs, this is the end? Apart from what they can enjoy now, before 2027, after that, there's nothing else?
That is a very loaded question. But if you go back to Ida's speech, outside what she spoke about wealth creation for self and for the nation, she also indicated that if you wanted to have a good conversation or move the thinking of Mr. Raila Odinga, you needed to have a conversation with Dr. Oburu Odinga. Now, Dr. Oburu Odinga is the acting party leader. That speaks volume. In fact, after our speech, PCS Musalia Mudavadi and President Ruto made reference to that speech. And in my view, any serious student of politics must now go study that speech into detail. And even one hopes that our master students and PhD students are going to develop very unique interests. Now, again, political scholars tell us you have two levels of political leaders. The first category is the political cunning leaders. They know how to craft a campaign strategy and win, and they know how to stay in office. Then the second is the political conscious leader, that as soon as you win an election, then you go to office, you work for the national interest or the public interest, or you work for the public good. Now, the challenge normally is to have a leader who has got a rich mix, maybe 50-50. But majority of the members of the National Assembly and Senate, in fact, would say majority of elected leaders in Kenya are political cunning leaders. That for them, their interest is to win an election, retain office, and win another election. But with the exit of Mr. Raila Odinga, for the first time, you're going to have a democratic meritocracy in Luo-Nyanza that are being endorsed by Mr. Raila Odinga is now a chapter in history books. So there's going to be very vicious competition in Luo-Nyanza. There's a very high probability that only the sharpest tools in the shed will actually get elected to office. So you are not going to go and look for, because we understand from people who have attempted to run for public office, that all you needed to do was to hold court with Ida Odinga and Oburu Odinga, and then Mr. Raila Odinga would land in your constituency and endorse you. You would even recall there is one election when James Orengo was running for Senate. We are told he didn't even print a poster because Mr. Raila Odinga and Dr. Oburu Odinga had said, we need this man in Nairobi. We need his intellectual infrastructure in Nairobi. There are so many legal issues we'll be having in Nairobi. We need him there. We even told that IBC had to look for somebody to take his certificate. Now, you'll have the same thing happening in many parts of Mount Kenya. Because again, there are people who won electoral office for simply insulting Mr. Raila Odinga. The louder it is, the higher the decibels, the higher you went to Mount Kenya to insult Mr. Raila Odinga, then you also won a seat. So even those ones are going to be in a lot of trouble. However, you cannot underrate anybody who has won an election, even as a chairman of a cattle dip. Because to have capacity to convince even, you know, when people go to vote, sometimes it's raining early in the morning, it's very cold, or it's very hot, and then you go and queue for hours on end. Sometimes you're forced to buy githeri with avocado to give you energy to go through. So anybody who convinces even 2,000 people and who understands the art of self-preservation, you cannot ignore them. Kenyan politicians are known to read the stars, to know how the stars are going to be aligned. So if they find that supporting President William Ruto is going to give them very good returns on investments, very good dividends, they are going to align. And you saw from the way they were speaking yesterday, in fact, majority of the low cabinet secretaries and elected leaders, they were not even addressing Kenya when they were speaking in English. They were addressing the people back in the village. So for me, probability of them surviving, at least for the next 2 years, and playing ball with President Ruto is going to be very high. But as we go to the general elections, if they do not recalibrate and refocus and readjust, you are going to have many political orphans, which in my view is a very good thing for the nation. You know, a nation cannot develop if every person, I mean, people will just win because of personality politics. You know, all the political parties in Kenya, all of them in Kenya, the political leadership has got the option of giving you a direct nomination or subjecting you to party primaries, and these party primaries cannot be described as free and fair.
Yes, and indeed many people in Luo Nyanza especially enjoyed some direct tickets from ODM party. I want to give you an opportunity to make your final comments because we need to exit studio. I can see preparations for the Mashujaa Day are at an advanced stage. The president's protocol team is already at the venue, meaning that the president is not very far away. Wakili Kibe Mungai, your final comments on what we've just been discussing, the way forward. End of an era, Raila Odinga is no longer with us. Politically, going forward, what is your prediction?
I think I can sense a sigh of relief amongst many Kenyans, including in Luo Nyanza, that for the first time in their lives, there is likely to be some kind of an open competition for political seats, and that is meaningful. And in saying this, there is also the second issue that you may have to get almost a complete recalibration even when Parliament resumes. There will be no BBG government except to the extent that there are some people who are donated to go and work directly with the government, and those people who have parliamentary seats. Everybody else, because BBG is supposed to be institutional. There are two coalitions or two major political parties, UDA and ODM, coming together to achieve a certain agenda. That agenda, because of the civil war that is going to ensue in ODM, is not going to be determined very quickly. And of course, everybody else who does not agree with, there will be two ODMs. There will be ODM original. I believe ODM original must be for those who want to keep their homestead, and ODM to continue surviving as a party. And then there will be the ODM, the Pro-Ruto ODM. How far the impact of either group is going to be, again, may not depend so much by ODM itself. Because in the coming year, depending on the fortunes and the capacity of William Ruto to deliver to the people of Kenya, if there is more pain, if there is more bitterness, if there is going to be more killings and human rights violations, then you are going to get yourselves into a situation that on the ground people are going to be hostile. Because remember that there is the governments that go out to try to bribe leaders to come to them, the main justification for that bribery is because on account of their incapacity to deliver on their mandate to the people directly. I do not see anybody in ODM being able, despite the pain, to say in good faith, mimi ni mtu wa Ruto. Okay? Because Raila could be able, despite the pain and people eating grasshoppers, to tell them, let us still vote for this man. That is not going to happen.
All right.
And it's going to be a game changer.
Professor?
Mine is first of all to say that I was so disappointed when I heard William Ruto reading to people numbers that are useless to people, like inflation from 9 to 4, exchange rate, I don't know, from 169 to 229. Who feels it? Who feels that inflation rate? I want to tell Mr. President to go and deliver to the people 4 things, if you don't know. 1, social life, which is have 4 things: education, healthcare, food security, and social protection. After you do that and people feel it, then they can understand the numbers. Now, to go and make my conclusion is that I want to tell ODM people, if you want to be authentic to Raila's legacy, I'll give you a secret which you know. William Ruto signed 66 papers with Raila, and they are in blue colors. They were presented at ODM meeting. Raila was showing them to you. Go get those copies and ensure they are implemented in this current administration. And to end by saying this, Raila's love was so organic. It was not commercial. It is not difficult. It's not easy to get someone like him. The only thing I can say is that we have to put ourselves into a serious prayer so that God can give us a prayer, because Raila was loved that even if he didn't spend his money, like you said, people still had a reason to love him. So national love is good. Baba is Baba. Go in peace, Baba. We love you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Just a parting shot because we need to link up with Josh Onsari.
Yeah, in my view, the Kenyan voter must run away from the Stockholm syndrome and vote with their selfish interest in mind. Because majority of the time, the average Kenyan voter is very rational for 4.5 years. But every time we approach the election, then they become victims of the Stockholm syndrome. They start talking about the politics of Mtuetu, and they end up electing people who score an A in impunity, an A in mediocrity, and an A in corruption. You would even remember towards the last election, Professor Matiang'i warned Kenyans that these people have presented themselves. Some of them do money laundering, some of them do wash, and they went ahead and voted for those persons. Now, if you elect somebody who makes a living from money laundering, how do you expect them to pass an anti-money laundering legislation? So in my view, the Kenyan voter must vote with their selfish interest in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, Wakili Kibe Mungai, and Professor Fred Ogola, who is an economics and governance expert, our panelists this morning, as we continue looking at the events of the last few days and reflecting on the exit of Raila Amolo Odinga, end of an era. A person who has been a towering political figure in Kenya now is no longer with us. What happens next? And this is a conversation that will definitely continue in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for your time here at TV47 this morning. We now want to shift focus to Mashujaa Day celebrations. Of course, the headlines this morning, end of an era, that's the Daily Nation. And the full coverage on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Those are 12 pages of coverage on just the events of the last few days, and focused yesterday on the interment of the former Prime Minister in Siaya. It's the same story on the front page of the Star, hero send-off. End of an era. Mama Ida Odinga and her daughter Winnie Odinga laying a wreath on the grave of Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister, eulogized as a patriot, democrat, and great statesman. Our Shujaa always at the front page of the Standard, and if you look at it, the back page as well, a proper spread, remembered forever, Shujaa always. And what the Standard has done is that they've given personal comments there from different people, including the speakers of the National Assembly and the Senate, some of the CSs, the president himself, family members, on how they remember the former Prime Minister. That's the Standard. And the Business Daily as well, Raila's unfinished business. Ex-Prime Minister pushed for revival of Vision 2030 projects, election manifestos, promises to grow manufacturing. Let me take a look at more dailies this morning, because it's more or less the same. And on the front page of Taifa Leo, Nenda Salama, and a picture of the wreath there. Something different here. And People Daily. People Daily, where is that? Goodbye, Baba, a farewell to Kenya's true Shujaa. Well, let's now go back to Kitui, the Ithokwe Stadium, where my colleague Josh Onsari continues to talk to some of the dignitaries who have arrived ahead of the celebrations. Over to you, Josh.
Fred Indimuli, tuko mubashara kabisa kutoka uwanja wa Ithokwe katika kaunti hii ya Kitui, ambako tunazungumzia masuala yanayohusiana na mashujaa. Na hapa siko peke yangu, niko na viongozi, niko na wakazi ambao tumeshazungumza nao. Na mheshimiwa, karibia hapa ili tuweze kuzungumza, utueleze sherehe hizi. Najua jana tumekuwa kwenye mazishi kule Bondo, umefika hapa shughuli hii ya mashujaa. Wewe kama kiongozi kutoka serikali, hali iko vipi?
Mimi kama msemaji wa serikali, mwanzo ni kusema tena tuna rambirambi kwa sababu na huzuni na simanzi kubwa kwa sababu ya kumpoteza shujaa wetu Raila Amolo Odinga, ambaye tuliweza kupumzisha jana kule Bondo, Opoda Farm huko Nyamira, na ilikuwa ni jambo la huzuni sana. Na iweje kwamba sasa hivi tunasherekea Mashujaa Day pasi kumtaja yeye, hususan kwa sababu tunaangazia maudhui ya nishati, kwamba yeye mwenyewe alikuwa ni kiongozi wa ngazi za juu sana katika kutetea mambo ya nishati. Ikumbukwe tu ni hivi karibuni alivyoongoza serikali kwa ujumla kupitia ile nuclear, na tunaanzisha kwamba tutakuwa na kile kiwanda cha nishati ya nuclear kule Siaya. Pia yeye mwenyewe amewekeza katika mambo ya kutengeneza mitungi ya gesi katika ile East Africa Spectre na Spectre International, na pia mambo ya mafuta. Na alikuwa anasema ni vizuri sana tuwe na miundombinu ambayo itahakikisha kwamba tuna nishati ya kutosha. Mheshimiwa Rais mwenyewe amesema ili tuweze kuwa katika nchi ambayo imeendelea sana, kati ya nchi ambazo zilizoendelea, tunahitaji megawati zaidi ya 10,000. Sasa hivi tunavyozungumza tuna megawati 10,000 peke yake. Kwa hiyo tuna kibarua kikubwa kama tutaweza kufikia ile ndoto ya mwenda zake Raila Amolo Odinga, ambaye tuna huzuni sana tunapo kumsherehekea kama shujaa wetu.
Na katika ile list ambayo imetolewa ni watu 184 ambao wametambuliwa katika shughuli hii. Kuna wengi wanajiuliza ni kriteria gani inatumika na kuna pesa wanapata?
Kuna mambo ambayo yamepangwa na ile jopo kazi la Heroes, inaitwa National Heroes Council, ambayo tulipitisha hiyo sheria wakati nilikuwa katika bunge la kitaifa. Lakini tunaangalia mambo mengi tu kama serikali, kama wewe ni mtu ambaye kweli umeweza kuisaidia jamii na ukawa kutajika, sio tu wewe mwenyewe ujifikiri kwamba wewe ni shujaa. Na kuna yale ambayo mafanikio ambayo wanapata, mwanzo tukianza na kule kutuzwa kwenyewe. Wajua kila mtu hufanya jitihada zake, lakini wakati unatuzwa unakuwa kwamba unapatiwa kipaumbele, unapatiwa sifa zako, inakuwa kwamba kweli hata wewe unamshukuru Mungu kwa sababu kwamba kila ambacho umefanya kimeonekana. Na ni warai wa Kenya wenzangu kwamba pia wao wajitolee, hususan kwa uzalendo na utaifa, tuijenge Kenya. Kama Kenya haitosonga mbele, kama kila mtu hatachukulia jukumu lake na kuhakikisha kwamba tunafanya mambo ambayo ni ya kizalendo, mambo ambayo ni ya kuwainua Wakenya, ndio pia wewe mwenyewe uweze kuitwa siku moja shujaa kama vile ambao tunao 184 na hususan kama kiongozi Raila Odinga.
Asante sana. Rais William Ruto alikuwa afike hapa wakati wa kuzindua miradi mbalimbali, lakini kifo cha aliyekuwa waziri mkuu kikatokea, na kuna mipango kutoka kwa serikali kufika tena wakati huu ili kuweza kutembea na kuzindua miradi ambayo ilikusudiwa.
Mwanzo alikuwa aje azindue kwa mfano huu uwanja wa michezo wa Ithokwe, na pia kuna miradi mingine kama kuna uwanja wa ndege, kuna barabara, kuna pia ile last mile connectivity na kadhalika. Tuna siku 7 za kumwomboleza Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, na ilianza Jumatano iliyopita na sasa leo ni Jumatatu. Kwa hivyo bado tuna siku 2-3 ambazo zimebaki. Baada hapo kuna programu tu kubwa ya rais kuweza kuzulu hili eneo la Kitui, la Machakos, Ukambani kwa ujumla. Kwa hiyo tutakuwa tukimwona akifanya lile, lakini tungoje mpaka yeye mwenyewe aweze kutoa ratiba ambayo itakuweko baada ya maombolezi haya.
Shukran sana. Tunapokamilisha, kauli yako ni ipi kwa Wakenya tukiwa katika uwanja wa Ithokwe, kaunti ya Kitui?
Ni tuseme kwamba Wakenya tuwe watu wa uzalendo, watu ambao wanapendana, watu ambao wana utangamano, watu ambao ni wataua, watu ambao wanaienzi nchi hii yetu, na tusiingie katika masuala ya ukabila, tusikuwe katika masuala ya mgawanyiko, na tuweze kumuunga mkono rais wetu na serikali yetu, kwa sababu hii ndio iko na sisi ndio tulichagua, ndio tuweze kupata matunda ya kazi hii, kwa sababu Kenya inapoinuka sisi sote tunafaidika, na tusikuwe na bugdha. Wale ambao tunasikia wanasema sijui namna gani, serikali ni ya mseto, ni serikali ya broad base na ni ya kila Wakenya wote. Ukiangalia Mheshimiwa William Ruto amesawazisha maendeleo, kila kaunti na jambo la kujivunia, na mimi kama msemaji wa serikali naweza kudhibitisha hilo, naweza kuhakikisha hilo. Kwa hivyo tuwe kwa umoja na tusaidiane kwa sababu ya haya maudhui nishati, na kila mtu leo akumbuke jambo moja mbili ambalo Raila ameweza kufanya. Uandika kwenye mtandao wako kama ni Facebook, andika kwenye WhatsApp yako status, vile unavyotaweza muelehadithia, ili tuweze kumkumbuka na kumpatia heshima zake, na Mungu aweze kuibariki Kenya. Kenya itainuka, Kenya itasimama, Kenya itanawiri kwa umoja na uzalendo. Mimi ni Mkenya mzalendo. Je, wewe? Mimi ni Mkenya mzalendo daima. Mungu aibariki Kenya.
Shukran sana mheshimiwa mtazamaji. Huyo ni Isaac Mwaura ambaye ni msemaji wa serikali akizungumzia shughuli nzima ya miradi ya serikali na vilevile masuala ambayo yanahusiana na utendakazi wa serikali. Fred Ndimuli, ndo hali halisi, tunaendelea kukusanya. Tutakuwa tunamtaarifu mtazamaji wetu, na ikumbukwe kwamba sherehe hizi zinajiri wakati ambapo taifa limempoteza kiongozi mzalendo na vilevile shujaa ambaye ametajwa katika kuchangia demokrasia taifa hili na vilevile ukuaji wa sheria. Ikumbukwe kwamba Raila Amolo Odinga aliwahi pigania pakubwa kuwepo kwa mfumo wa vyama vingi na aliweza kutajwa pakubwa kama shujaa wa kuhakikisha kuna demokrasia ambayo inadumu na demokrasia endelevu kwa taifa la Kenya. Mengi tutakuwa tunakutaarifu hivi sasa. Uwanja wa Ithokwe umejaa hadi pomoni hivi sasa. Kinachosubiriwa ni baadhi ya viongozi na vilevile uwanja huu kufungua rasmi sherehe hizi za mashujaa mwaka 2025. Kutoka papa hapa wanakwetu wananiita Joash Nzare, mnasapicha wangu akiwa Francis Kakai, kwako studioni Fred Indemoli.
Asante sana Joash Nzare kutoka kule Kitui Ithokwe Stadium, ambapo sherehe za mashujaa mwaka huu 2025 ziko karibu kwanza. Now, one of the things to be noted is that the event today and the events preceding for about 1 week or so leading to this event were under the theme Transforming Lives Through Sustainable Energy Solutions. And it's that conversation that we now want to start and talk about matters energy and how it links up